Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a bit of material here today, and it all seems to circle around one really powerful message.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah, that's the core of it. We're going to dig into these perspectives, looking at, well, perseverance and faith, specifically through a Christian lens.
Exactly. And our mission really is to pull out those practical insights, the kind of wisdom you can actually use when you feel like you're just done, ready to throw in the towel.
Because we all get there, don't we? Those moments where quitting just feels like the only option.
Mm-hmm. But what keeps coming up in this material is that not giving up isn't just about, gritting your teeth. It's tied to something deeper. Purpose, faith.
Right, and this idea that real strength, maybe your true strength, is often forged when things are toughest, not when everything's easy.
So we're drawing from a few different places. One perspective is like a sermon transcript full of personal stories, biblical stuff. Another is more like a collection of quotes, insights.
And we're going to explore the ideas in all of it, trying to find those keys to, well, persistence.
Okay, so let's unpack this. One of the first things that jumps out is this idea that life isn't just floating from one high point to another.
No, definitely not. It makes it really clear that between those triumphs, those mountaintops, you're going to hit valleys. It's inevitable.
Those times when things just feel off,
Yeah.
out of place, maybe even like it's all falling apart.
Yeah, and it's so easy then to think, okay, what am I doing wrong here?
But what's interesting is the immediate shift in perspective the material offers. It suggests that even when things look like, well, chaos to us.
From maybe a higher viewpoint, God's perspective, let's say, those same chaotic pieces might actually be fitting into place.
That's a big thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It connects directly to trusting in God's will, which the material describes as good, pleasing, perfect.
And it talks about the kind of peace that can come when you actually entrust the government of your situation, as one source puts it, to Him.
But that brings up a tough question. What if what you really want isn't happening?
Right. The material doesn't ignore that. It tackles it head on, saying sometimes the answer you're praying for is simply no.
Oof, that's hard.
It is. But the point made is that this no isn't a mistake. It's also part of that perfect plan for you.
So it feels completely counterintuitive. You're asking for yes,
Yeah.
pouring your heart out, and the door closes.
But the material argues that the deepest peace doesn't come from getting the answer you want right then. It comes from learning to receive the answer God has for you.
Okay, so there's a strength in trusting His promises, even when the immediate answer isn't what you expected.
Exactly. A kind of firmness that allows for peace, regardless.
And that leads straight into where you put your focus, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is a huge distinction in the material. If you keep looking at the problems, the giants, the waves, all the negative voices.
Fear. That's the natural result.
All right. But if you deliberately shift your focus to God, to Jesus, the result is peace. Consistently.
Reminds me of that story, Jesus sleeping in the boat during the storm.
Oh, yeah. The disciples are panicking, thinking they're going under.
And He's just resting. Because He trusted His Father was in control. His peace wasn't passive. It was like a demonstration of trust, an example.
But, and this is important, the material also points out that's not the only way. Discernment is crucial.
Meaning.
Well, sometimes it is time to rest in God, like Jesus in the boat, find that deep peace.
Okay.
But other times, it's time to actively battle with God, like Jesus in Gethsemane, agonized, asking His friends to stay awake with Him. That required engagement.
So figuring out the season you're in is key. Is it rest time or battle time?
Exactly. And that understanding comes from learning to hear what God is doing or saying right now.
Which brings up another common feeling. The material addresses that feeling that God is silent, just absent.
And the perspective offered is interesting. It's not necessarily that God isn't speaking.
But maybe that we're not listening, or there's too much other noise.
Yeah, precisely. We're listening to too many competing voices, and the material circles back to the power in God's promises.
Like that core argument. If He gave His own Son the ultimate gift.
Then the bedrock promises He'll also give you everything else you truly need. In His way, His time. That's a deep source of security.
It really is. And along with that, we have to accept that challenges, battles, they aren't necessarily detours. They're often just part of the path. Life is like that, as the material puts it simply.
Right, it's not meant to be easy all the time.
Yeah.
And heroes of faith, they aren't usually made lounging by the pool, are they?
No. The material uses the example of David, great king, warrior, chosen by God. But when he stayed back in the palace, comfortable, while his army was at war, that's when he made huge mistakes.
Right. The real forging happens in the storms, in the difficulties. Like that saying, good sailors aren't made in calm seas.
You trust the sailor who's been through a few storms, right?
Absolutely. And the material gives a really powerful example of this. The Apostle Paul.
Okay, maybe just briefly for anyone listening. Paul was a huge figure in early Christianity. Started out against Jesus' followers, had this incredible turnaround experience.
And became this major missionary, wrote a lot of the New Testament letters, hugely influential.
Right, and the material highlights that he went through multiple shipwrecks, actual shipwrecks.
Yeah. And the point isn't just that the ships were destroyed, it's that Paul kept going. He persevered.
There's that story. After one wreck, he makes it to an island.
Oh yeah, the snake bite. He's gathering wood for a fire and this viper latches onto his hand.
And the locals watching immediately think, okay, he survived the sea, now a snake gets him, he must be cursed, a murderer.
But then nothing happens. He doesn't swell up, doesn't die. He just shakes it off.
And their opinion flips completely. Suddenly they think he's a god.
It's such a dramatic swing, but the principle the material pulls out is crucial for us. Don't let the crowd's opinion, or even what circumstances look like, define your situation or who you are.
So God's view of you isn't based on whether you're currently winning or losing in the world's eyes.
Exactly. Your walk is meant to be by faith what you believe about God's promises, not by sight what you can see happening right now. Circumstances might scream failure, but faith holds on to what God said.
That's a powerful distinction. And it leads into some deeper ideas about purpose and the whole process of building something lasting.
Right. The material challenges that very common idea that life's ultimate goal is just to be happy.
Yeah, it seems like the modern quest, doesn't it?
It does, but the sermon transcript suggests if that's your main goal, you end up constantly comparing yourself to others and feeling empty if you're not happy all the time.
So what's the alternative presented?
That the real purpose is about becoming who you are called to be specifically, who Jesus called you to be.
Okay. And the happiness part.
That comes as a consequence, a result of pursuing that calling and growth rather than being the thing you chase directly. It reframes everything.
It really does. And tied to that is this idea of process, how things often look sudden, but they're not. The material uses the phrase, do nada, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, like a business suddenly taking off after years of quiet work, or someone seeming to find success overnight.
Or even a church or community growing suddenly.
Right. But the point is, those sudden breakthroughs almost always have a long, hidden period of preparation behind them. Lots of time, effort, development happening in secret.
So while it looks like nothing's happening on the outside,
God might be generating something deep inside you, something foundational. So the advice is, don't get anxious. Don't rush that hidden process.
that idea of process also links to persevering in place, doesn't it? Staying put where God has you.
Yes, very strongly. Whether it's ministry, a business, a family situation, holding on to a vision, stay there.
Because things don't just stop or shift randomly. They develop as you remain faithful right where you are. Staying put is an act of faith.
It shows hope, anchors you in the process.
And often, moving forward, experiencing those breakthroughs or miracles, it requires something from us, a step.
Yes, the material really emphasizes this. Miracles are often described as reactive. They happen in response to an act of faith.
Several examples come up,
Yeah.
like the woman with the issue of blood.
Suffered for 12 years, isolated socially and religiously because of her condition. She had to actively push through a crowd, break the rules, just to touch Jesus' robe, believing that would heal her.
That took incredible boldness, real risk.
Absolutely. Then there's the blind man. Common situation back then, often meaning a life of begging.
Right, and he had to cry out persistently, even when people told him to be quiet, to stop bothering Jesus.
His step of faith was his voice, refusing to be silenced.
And the paralytic man.
His friends, they couldn't get through the crowd, so they went up on the roof, dug a hole, and lowered him down right in front of Jesus.
Wow, that's extraordinary effort. Radical faith from his friends.
Definitely. And even just the crowds who followed Jesus everywhere, they endured hardship, heat, hunger, long walks just to be near him.
Their step was simply the effort to show up, to stay close.
So all these stories paint this picture. Stepping out in faith, taking some kind of action, often seems to be what activates or releases God's intervention. It requires our participation.
Okay, and the material uses a really stark analogy about, about not taking action. The person on the wall.
Yeah, that's a vivid one. Picture someone standing on a wall. On one side, God's calling, inviting them into his promises. On the other side, the inferno, the enemy, just waiting, looking almost bored.
Why bored?
Because the person on the wall, stuck in indecision, in apathy about God's call, they're already where the enemy wants them, in neutral.
But the point is, there is no neutral ground in this spiritual sense.
Exactly. Apathy isn't safe waiting. It's presented as a position without a promise. You're passively siding with inaction.
That's quite challenging.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you do try to step off that wall, move towards God's promises, you hit resistance.
Yeah.
That feeling like you don't belong.
The material calls it a spirit of intimidation.
Like a voice, internal or external, saying, you shouldn't be here. This isn't for you. You're out of your league.
But the counter to that, the powerful truth offered, is simple. If God put you there, you have every right to be there, period.
Uses examples like Daniel, right? An exile, but governing in powerful pagan Babylon.
Or Joseph, sold into slavery, imprisoned, but rose to influence in Egypt, both in intimidating foreign places, but placed there by God's hand.
So the response to that intimidation isn't shrinking back. It's pointing back to God and saying, He put me here. I belong.
Exactly. Your placement gives you authority.
Okay, let's maybe try and pull together some really practical takeaways from all this. The sermon source had a great little list.
Yeah, that was helpful. Like bullet points for when you feel like quitting.
Right, so first, when battles come, don't retreat.
Second,
Okay.
when attacks happen, don't panic.
Third, during storms, be really careful who you listen to. Don't give access to people who don't offer faith-based direction.
Good one. Fourth, while you're in the process, don't get distracted. Stay focused.
Fifth, even when it looks bad, don't lose confidence in the promise God gave you.
And maybe the most important, remember, you are not alone in this.
That's a fantastic summary. The sources also bring in that bigger biblical perspective on suffering, like from 2 Corinthians.
Ah, yes. Chapter 4, verses 16 to 18. That passage is huge for perspective.
It talks about, even if our bodies are wearing down, our inner selves can be renewed daily.
Right. And it frames our current troubles, even the really hard ones, as light and momentary compared to the eternal glory they're producing.
That whole idea of focusing on the unseen, the eternal, rather than just the visible, temporary stuff around us, it really reframes hardship.
It absolutely does. And it brings us back to that theme of process again. It's not always instant victory.
Like Jesus' own life. He didn't just appear and win. He was born, grew up, learned, faced challenges.
But he won definitively in the end. God works through processes. It takes time.
And the power for that process. The material points strongly to Ephesians 3:2. God can do infinitely more than all we ask or imagine.
According to his power that works within us. That last part is the kicker.
So the same power that brought Jesus back from the dead,
It's actually described as living inside believers, available to work in our lives, our circumstances. Resurrection power for perseverance.
wow, that's the core strength right there. And the material also touches on why we need that strength, why there's opposition. It talks about the inferno, the enemy.
Actively trying to stop believers, harm families, create doubt. Why? Because from this viewpoint, the enemy hates what God loves.
And conversely, whatever God puts his love and effort into us, our families, his promises, that's exactly what the enemy targets.
Makes sense. But then there's that ultimate security, like from Romans 8. Nothing can separate us from God's love. Not death, life, angels, demons, present fears, future worries. Nothing.
That feeling of being held, anchored in that love, no matter what the storm looks like.
Yeah. And it connects to that command given to Joshua. Remember him? Taking over from Moses, facing a huge task, leading people into the promised land.
Right, daunting stuff. And God tells him,
Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. It's a direct command and a promise of presence.
a powerful anchor.
Yeah.
And finally, the material highlights Psalm 91 as a source of comfort. Psalms are like sacred songs or poems, right?
Exactly. And Psalm 91 is all about finding security and protection in God.
It paints this beautiful picture of safety, doesn't it? Dwelling close to God, being shielded from dangers, seen and unseen.
Covered by his wings, his faithfulness like a shield, freedom from fear, day or night, angels guarding you, not stumbling, overcoming danger.
And promises that God saves those who love him, answers their call, is with them in trouble, delivers, honors, gives long life.
It's presented as this incredible wellspring of confidence and refuge. Just reading it can bring peace.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together from our deep dive today,
Mhm.
what are the key principles we can take away for navigating our own journeys, especially when we feel like giving up?
Let's try and list them out, like guidelines. First, recognize valleys are normal, not failure.
Second, try to see beyond the immediate chaos. Trust God might be fitting things together.
Third, accept that sometimes no is part of his good plan.
Fourth, choose focus. God and his promises, not the problems.
Fifth, discern the season. Time to rest in him or step out with him.
Sixth, remember growth often comes through struggle, not ease.
Seventh, see challenges as opportunities for God's power as you persevere.
Eighth, understand that your step of faith often activates his intervention.
Ninth, reject neutrality. Apathy has no promise. Actively stand with God.
10th, counter intimidation with the truth. If God placed you, you belong.
11th, remember the Holy Spirit's power within you, resurrection power.
And 12th, find refuge and confidence in his presence and promises, like Psalm 91.
Yeah, that covers the core ideas, I think.
And the underlying message through it all is just crystal clear. Don't give up.
Your story isn't just one bad snapshot, it's a whole film, still unfolding. The challenges feel huge now, but they're temporary. His promises are eternal.
So as we wrap up, here's a thought to maybe leave you with, building on that idea of process.
Okay.
We talked about how those those sudden breakthroughs, usually have a long, hidden preparation time, unseen work.
Right. God building something foundational, even when it looks like nothing's happening.
Exactly. So the question is, what secret thing might God be building in you right now as you persevere through something that feels anything but glamorous? What unseen work in your character, your faith, your future might be happening in this valley?
That's a great question to reflect on, a really powerful perspective to hold on to.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.